Welcome, Pewter Report readers, viewers, and listeners, to a brand new edition of the Pewter Report podcast brought to you by our friends over at Briar Grease Insurance. Protecting your assets starts with a company that you can count on. So whether it's auto, homeowners, flood, boaters, or business insurance, Briar Grease Insurance are the best people in the business to work with. So for more information, visit briargreaseinsurance.com or give them a call at 813-876-4166. That's 813-876-4166. It is a Tuesday edition of the Pewter Report podcast. Hello to everybody that is just filing in and getting into the chats on today's show. Yesterday, if you watched us, we talked all about the depth for the Bucs on the offensive side of the football. So today, we turn our attention to the defensive side. We're going to look at each and every single position for the Bucs on defense, identify where we think they are the deepest group, and see how they can get better in 2025. We'll also talk about a little bit of news that came out today regarding your Buccaneers and a certain polarizing uniform that makes fans go crazy one way or another. So let's get this show rocking and rolling. I'm your host, Matt Matera. Joined with me, returning back to the show, is the face that runs the place at pewterreport.com, SR, Scott Reynolds. Hello, Scott. How are we doing?
Good. I decided since it was a defensive day, I would participate in the podcast. You know, I don't talk offense, so yesterday was not really my day to be on the show. No, we thank Michael Pless from Real Bucs Talk for filling in for me as I was up in Georgia for the weekend, and glad to be back and talking some Bucs football. And yeah, let's talk a little defense, Matt, where I don't know that it's as deep as the offense in some of those particular units. I mean, the offensive line, right? I mean, that's super talented. They've got some interesting depth pieces there. We saw a lot of Charlie Heck, the swing tackle. He played all the reps in the starting left tackle spot for Tristan Wirfs. Running back is stacked. Wide receiver stacked, certainly. Kyle Trask for the Traskaholics. He bolsters the quarterback position right behind Baker Mayfield. For those people that don't believe in Kyle Trask, maybe quarterback is not as strong. But the defense, I think, lacks some depth compared to what we saw from the offense last year, and then, of course, the parts that they've added this year, too. I mean, wide receiver, probably the most talented position on this team and the deepest. But when we asked Todd Bowles what the strongest depth unit was on the defensive side, where are you the deepest in terms of talent, he actually said inside linebacker. And that kind of surprised you and I during the early part of the OTAs. But then as we watched the OTA practices, Matt, as we were out there for all three of the mandatory minicamp practices, we liked what we saw from Anthony Walker and Deion Jones. And even though we didn't see Levante David outside of him being a spectator, saw a lot of Servassier Dennis. We feel better about inside linebacker now, don't we?
It is night and day how much better that you, I, pretty much everyone that was at practice feels about the Bucs inside linebacker room, because that was a group, that was a unit going in where it's like, all right, I think they may be the weakest overall, and maybe because it lacked a little bit of the star power outside of Levante David that some of the other positions have. Of course, defensive tackle, which we'll talk about. We'll talk about every position. But with a lot of other of these spots on the defensive side, it's a lot of top heaviness, like with interior defensive line with Vita Vea and Kalijah Kancey. But what's the case after that? I think safety, there's a argument to be had, or a conversation to be had as well, about what about after the top two guys and maybe one formidable backup. But inside linebacker, it's a little bit of linebacker by committee, but that's in a good way for the Buccaneers this upcoming season. So yeah, it was surprising to hear Todd Bowles say that, but you know, the proof is in the pudding. We all went out and watched it. And now if Servassier Dennis can stay healthy, and the group that's a little bit on the older side, if they can stay together as a unit, it could end up being one of the strongest groups of this team, which comes as a bit of a surprise.
Yeah. Well, when it comes to the starters, I don't know that there is a better, more powerful starter group than defensive tackle, right? Let's start there with the two guys that were in the sack race last year, leading this team. We talked about on today's Pewter Report Roundtable which player we think will lead the Bucs in sacks this year. Matt, you picked Vita Vea, and I can't say that that's a bad pick. I mean, he led the team with 6.5 sacks a couple years ago, was awfully close. It was kind of a neck and neck thing with he and Kalijah Kancey. Kancey had 7.5, but yet Vita Vea had a career high 7 in what was his second Pro Bowl season. I think Kalijah Kancey has Pro Bowls in his future. And of course, Vita Vea at age 30 now is that seasoned veteran up front with the C on his chest. And then you've got Logan Hall, right, who's in a contract year. So typically the Bucs keep 6 defensive tackles. They call them linemen because some guys play the 4-eye defensive end position like Will Golston used to and all that, and then you have the 3-tech, the 1-tech, and Todd Bowles will interchange these guys a lot. But with Logan Hall's emergence last year, Matt, you think back to that Falcons game. I mean, granted, he's sacking a statue, and Kirk Cousins, but he got a sack on Jalen Hurts, right? And then he sacked your favorite player, your favorite quarterback. Of course, I'm talking about Chargers Justin Herbert, right? So, he's in a contract year now, and so I'm feeling pretty good about Logan Hall having another really quality year. And then that's 3 out of the 6. Then they also spent a draft pick on
Elijah
Roberts, friend of the program, right? So he's probably going to be, number 4 there. But so you feel pretty good about that. Then there's a couple spots. Greg Gaines, I'm sure, will stick around as the backup nose tackle. He's an experienced guy, so that's 5. So defensive tackle position, it is top heavy in terms of star power. But it's not like it's pretty weak after that. I think they've done a pretty good job now. I'm pretty high on Elijah Roberts. I think you are too. Greg Gaines is what he is, a steady Eddie backup, kind of like the Anthony Nelson of defensive tackles, right? And then we'll see who battles it out for that final 6 spot at the defensive line spot.
Yeah, of course, there's Des Watson, which has become a fan favorite after he played at Florida, and we all know his gargantuan size. CJ Brewer is a guy that seems to be in the mix, year in and year out. But yeah, it's interesting. In 2 of the last 3 seasons, a defensive tackle has led the Buccaneers in sacks. As you just mentioned, Kalijah Kancey this most recent season. Yeah. And then in 2022, it was Vita Vea. But to have this 1-2 punch, this 1-2 combo with Vita and Kalijah leading the way in sacks for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, you don't see that too often anymore. With like maybe one team will have a stud defensive tackle. I know obviously the Chiefs had it with Chris Jones, but you don't necessarily see it with 2 guys. The Eagles had it with Jalen Carter as well. And the fact that Kalijah Kancey has not played in the first month of the season in either of his 2 years of his NFL career, if he's able to play a little bit more this season, that just makes the whole group that much more rambunctious. And what I think will help overall is not even necessarily, well, a little bit that Kalijah and Vita can start from game 1, but also with the addition of, Hassan Reddick at outside linebacker and the overall improvement that we think the Bucs are going to have at the edge rusher position, maybe that makes teams and that forces opponents to spend a little more time on trying to stop Yaya Diaby and Hassan Reddick, which will open things up. Maybe even they try to double team Kalijah Kancey, so then Vita Vea will get some more one-on-one opportunities, some more chances to get after the quarterback, because you can only double up so many pass rushers on third down or whatever the case may be. Logan Hall has all the momentum going for him because he was great in that last game of the season, the postseason against the Washington Commanders. Yeah. He's a bit of a streaky guy. Yes. A bit of a streaky guy where he'll have like 2 great games and then disappear. So the biggest thing I want for Logan Hall, certainly I want him to play very well, and that gets him a big contract next season, whether it's with the Bucs or with another team. But, we had Will Golston on before who said he's got, traits like J.J. Watt, and that necessarily hasn't translated. But
hasn't materialized, right?
Has not materialized in that sense. But I think Logan Hall has the ability to be, an above-average defensive tackle in this league. The glimpses and the flashes are there. And then Elijah Roberts, I'm super, super intrigued by him. I agree with everything you said about Greg Gaines. I mean, he was huge in that game against Detroit because remember, Vita Vea left it early, and Greg Gaines had to take over. He didn't take over the game necessarily, but he had to play a lot more snaps and is a real hard-nosed guy. So I don't have too many concerns about Greg Gaines. But Elijah Roberts, for the overall future of this
Yeah.
defensive line group, I
Pretty
think, is
exciting
super
player.
important. He's exciting, but I think it's super important as well. We know Kalijah Cansey has arrived, burst onto the scene. He's going into year 3. Let's
Yeah.
remember, Vita Vea is getting older. He's only got 2 more years left on his contract.
Right.
We kind of think Logan Hall might be out the door after the season, whether he has a great season or a below average season.
Right.
Greg Gaines is a guy that's on a year-to-year deal. So certainly next year's draft, we'll talk about that when it comes around.
Yeah.
But I think defensive tackle might be a little bit more towards
I
the
agree.
top, just about
Yep.
replenishing the trenches. But if Elijah Roberts can, be that day 3 pick, that diamond in the rough that the Bucs have gotten over the past couple of years at other positions, well, that eases your tensions a little bit. There's a lot of excitement with Elijah Roberts, not just because he's a friend of the program, but he's got that pass rushing ability. I mean, he was an edge rusher over at SMU. So kicking him inside with the speed and the pass rushing moves, that only helped the unit that much more.
For sure. And he might be drafted to be that Logan Hall replacement after this year, whether Logan flames out and is not worth re-signing or just wants a fresh start elsewhere, or he blows up and then the Bucs can't afford him because you're going to have to put money into Kalijah Cansey. You already have a lot of money into Vita Vea. But, I'm looking at these creamsicle pictures here, Matt, like this one right here.
That's right.
Of the fellas. And the Bucs did release their theme schedule for this year. And it wasn't as big of a fanfare with the creamsicle game because they've had it now the last couple of games. And if we're being honest, these last couple of years, the Bucs have lost. But the interesting thing is this year, the Buccaneers will be donning their creamsicles in prime time. That's right. They're going to be playing against, there we go, against the Atlanta Falcons. There's Bucky Irving. They're going to be playing against the Falcons again. Of course, this happened at Raymond James Stadium last year in Week 6. They lost 31-26 in a game that didn't have either Mike Evans or Chris Godwin because they lost both of those guys on Monday night in that massacre at the hands of the Baltimore Ravens.
Yeah.
And but the interesting thing about this, well, it's going to be a primetime game. The last time, and I went back and did some research on this, the last time the Buccaneers wore their creamsicle uniforms as their classic uniform, their original uniform was 1996, of course, because in 97 that ushered in the red and pewter with the new logo and everything like that. So 1996 was the last year that they wore that. In all of the creamsicle throwback games that they have had since 2009, those have all been day games. So the last time the Bucs wore their creamsicle uniforms in prime time, I was actually there, 1996.
Wow.
In Denver, Week 3, they lost to John Elway and the Denver Broncos on Sunday Night Football on TNT. Mike Patrick and Joe Theismann were the announcers, and the sideline reporter was, I want to say, Aaron Andrews back in TNT. And it was a very close game. Forget the score. I dropped it in the story that I did in the chat. You can read that there. But Donnie Abraham picked off John Elway for his first career interception. And so that was a notable thing. Abraham, the Iceman, wound up having 5 interceptions that year as a starting nickelback for Monty Kiffin and that Buccaneer defense. And that's a record that stands today as the most interceptions by a rookie Buccaneer player, 5. And we'll see if maybe Benjamin Morrison or Jacob Parrish ties or beats that mark this year. But that's the last time the Bucs wore their throwbacks in primetime. And that was a white jersey, orange pant ensemble. So it wasn't even the orange on white. And from what I understand, it's going to be the orange jerseys and the white pants at home on Thursday night against the Atlanta Falcons on week 15. So for those of you that don't like the creamsicles, sorry. We don't make the rules. We just report the games. That's the record right there. That's the game records. The Buccaneers have won one of those games. They actually beat Aaron Rodgers and the Packers. That was Josh Freeman getting, I want to say, his first start as a Buccaneer quarterback under Raheem Morris in 2009. And they came back to beat the Packers that game. Close game. Sammy Strotter caught a touchdown pass on 4th down in the 4th quarter from Josh Freeman to put the Bucs ahead narrowly, and then Tanar Jackson had a pick 6 and picked off Aaron Rodgers, much to Adam Slavan's chagrin. Was Slavan even born then in 2009? I don't even know. It was close.
Yeah. No, he would have to be
Okay.
because he'd be like 14 right now working for us.
Well, he
If
kind
he
of
was,
looks like he's 14 and when he
yeah,
doesn't grow
he
the beard
does.
out. But
Yeah, he does. He
yeah,
does a little
we
bit.
love Adam.
Yeah.
We kid. But yeah, you can see what's happened ever since then, right? 2010, they lost to the Falcons 28-24. They lost to the Panthers 38-12. They lost to the Saints 35-28. They were supposed to play the Cardinals in 2013. That game was canceled. Not the game, but the throwback part of it, because that was the year the NFL said, we're switching the rules. You can only wear one helmet. The Buccaneers helmet, of course, was pewter at the time. And so they couldn't just slap on a Bucco Bruce sticker on the pewter helmet. That wouldn't look right. So then the last time they played that throwback game was 2012, all the way till 2023 when the Lions beat the Bucs in the throwback game. A lot of fanfare around that one. And then a little bit less fanfare last year on the throwback game. And now it's just a press release. Yeah, here's our creamsicle game. So hopefully the Buccaneers can turn the tide and make the throwback game a thing rather than an annual loss. I think the fans would certainly appreciate that. And it's going to be a big game, Matt. It's a division rival game against the Falcons, which swept the Buccaneers last year.
Yeah, it could be a game where, maybe they don't clinch the NFC South just yet, but it puts them in a position where, they essentially only have to win one more game to punch their ticket to the postseason. They have to have the creamsicle jerseys. I mean, if you ask other people that are just fans of the NFL and not specifically the Buccaneers, it is widely regarded that the creamsicle jerseys are arguably the best throwback uniforms in the NFL. So I understand the superstition of the Bucs don't win in it. I'm also a superstitious guy, so I totally understand where fans are coming from. But I do kind of like that they're doing it in a situation where the Bucs don't win in creamsicles and they didn't win in prime time last season. So you kind of cancel out the two.
Yeah.
You're exercising both demons by having them collide into each other, and therefore the Bucs can get the win on that Thursday night game. As Jeff the Champ says, they are the best uniforms. What I hope for as well, I mean, first of all, why don't you put it against the Saints and get a winnable game? I know you and I have talked about it. Like, there are no easy games in the NFL, but the most winnable game on their schedule is probably the New Orleans Saints. They didn't do that. But also what I hope for is, there's rumors and discussion about the Bucs also wearing a creamsicle on the road.
Maybe that Seattle game.
And that's exactly what I was going to say, because Seattle's also their 50-year anniversary. They came in with the light blue and the silver helmets. I think that would be awesome for the Bucs in Seattle to wear their road creamsicles with white jersey, but the creamsicle pants, and the Seattle's rock their home jersey. So you get to see the creamsicle jerseys twice in the season.
I agree.
And you can't go 0-2 then. You got to win at least one of them.
That's right. You hope, right?
Yeah.
Oh, boy. We're going to get to the super chat in a second here. First, we have to take care of some business. Nate S., how do I win Bucs tickets? I heard you're giving some away. Tickets, please. We're not giving any tickets away. We have no tickets to give. So, sorry.
Yeah.
Just public service announcement there. We don't have any tickets to give away. So, we are not going to be giving any away, but at least not today. But we do have a super chat. Let's get to that, and we'll get on to today's topic here from Tate Miller, Matt.
Yeah, thank you, Tate Miller, for this $4.99 super chat, who says, in honor of me getting accepted to BYU as a transferee student, congratulations on that, Tate.
Yeah.
And Ryder Lions committing today. SR, could you give us your Big 12 preseason pick?
I have a lot of respect for BYU after they kicked the living crap out of my Kansas State Wildcats last year. That was a comeuppance. That was like that was a huge win for BYU because they went on to have a really good season. So I've got a lot of respect for BYU. They're a tough, hard-nosed, physical football team. And forgive me, they're brand new to the Big 12, so I don't have a lot of background and history on BYU in terms of where they are depth-wise, how many starters they lost, and all that. But like the coach, like the program, Provo's a tough place to play. I think they're going to be good again. They had fortune on their side. They won a lot of close games right at the end, and sometimes that can be a little bit of a misnomer because, like, if you go back to the Buccaneers, I'll throw it back into the Buccaneer arena here in 2010 with Josh Freeman and that particular team. They were 3-13 the year before. We talked about that creamsicle game they won against Aaron Rodgers and the Packers. one of 3 wins that season. The next year, they go 10-6. They missed the playoffs by 1 game that year. Raheem Morris famously said all season long, it's a race to 10. Should have been a race to 11 because 10 didn't get you in the playoffs. But it was the best season statistically in terms of wins that did not result in a playoff berth. And that was kind of a smoke and mirror season for the Buccaneers because they beat the likes of the Rams, the Browns, the Bengals, the Cardinals, I want to say. 4 teams that were really, really bad that year, like on the last play or the last drive of the game. So, Matt, they could have easily been 6-10, but they were 10-6 because they beat 4 chump teams kind of like right at the end with some Freeman fantastic finishes. And then the next year they went 4-12. So
yeah,
it kind of showed that 10-6 season was a bit of a fluke. I'm not going to say BYU had a fluke season, but they did win games in a very magical fashion last year. And we'll see if that was luck or if that was just they're a good football team. Kansas State is picked by some prognosticators to win the Big 12 this year. I do like our football team a lot. I don't have like I haven't studied enough to have like a full rundown. Maybe I'll get to that later this summer. But I think BYU and K-State are going to be good. I really do. And I think the Big 12 gets a little bit slept on, to be honest. I think we're actually a pretty good football conference that, is just not the SEC. But I think we can go toe-to-toe with the Pac-10 and the ACC, though. I really do.
Yeah, I mean, Arizona State put on a classic football game against Texas, and they ended up losing in overtime. But that was an incredible game. And Iowa State still has Rocco Beck coming back at quarterback. So for me, a lot of the times, like in the preseason, it's like, you don't know every single team yet. So it's kind of like, okay, who has like their best players and their top guys returning? Yeah. And for me, Iowa State, I think the fact that they still got their quarterback there makes a big difference. So no doubt. Good luck to everyone in the Big 12 this year. Should be exciting. Yeah, it's good competition. I mean, there were 4 teams that were 7-2 last year in the Big 12. So that's pretty leveled out competition. A couple 6-3 teams as well. Yeah,
a lot of bowl teams from the Big 12. I will not be going to Farmageddon this year because I have Bucs training camp to attend, and I'm not gonna waste a bunch of money, Matt, and go over to Ireland and perhaps watch my Kansas State Wildcats lose to Iowa State and Farmageddon over there in Ireland. I saw what happened to Florida State last year in Georgia Tech, and I'll have a separate Ireland vacation.
Yeah,
when I want a vacation,
you can still have a Guinness and watch the game.
Exactly. I'm not going to spend a bunch of money to watch Kansas State potentially lose, though. So
but if they win,
hey, about a crystal ball, man.
that's always the other side,
right? Yeah, exactly.
All right, let's get back on track. We spoke about the defensive linemen before. But it's an interesting group at outside linebackers, Scott, with the edge rushers. We know Yaya Diaby. Certainly the big addition this offseason, the big free agent signing was Hassan Reddick, who's here on a 1-year deal. We'll see if he can, get back to what he was with the Philadelphia Eagles a couple of years ago, double-digit sacks. Chris Braswell, what type of year is he going to have in year 2? Can he take another step? Can he develop into a solid pass rusher on this team? Of course, Anthony Nelson is back, the steady Eddie. And David Walker, a guy that impressed during OTAs. He's your typical Jason Light, small school draft pick, but tweaked his hamstring a little bit. Wasn't at mandatory minicamp, wasn't participating. He was there at practice. But I think this is an interesting group, Scott, because it can be – it could play itself into – a top 5 group in the NFL, but then also you have a lot of question marks in terms of, can Yaya Diaby prove he's an outside linebacker 1 and not just a solid outside linebacker 2? Yeah. What are you going to get from Hassan Reddick? Sure, it's not as risky because it's only a 1-year deal. So if it doesn't work out, it's not like you're attached to him long term. Chris Braswell, he has to take that next step. And if he doesn't, well, the only guy that's only been consistent really has been Anthony Nelson. So there's a lot of high potential for this team, but it could be a little bit of a house of cards too, just depending on what you get from some of the newer additions and Braswell, who was drafted last year too.
Yeah, potential is the most dangerous word in the NFL because it's scary, right? I mean, some guys, if you're banking on potential, you don't live up to it, it can really wreck your season. If you're counting on guys to be something that they ultimately are not or don't become. But, we were doing this Pewter Report roundtable, and everybody picked a particular player. I had Yaya Diaby, you had Vita Vea. I think Sly picked Kalijah Kancey. Josh picked Hassan Reddick, and then Bailey kind of like chickened out and he didn't pick Chris Braswell. He said,
well, I mean, in fairness,
I know,
he'd be crazy to pick Chris Braswell.
Exactly. I'm giving Bailey a hard time. He picked a tie between Diaby and Reddick, which could happen. It very well could. And he even went so far as to say maybe like not double digits, but like 8.5 sacks apiece or something. And I could kind of see that. But the more I thought about it and kind of bringing that to today's show, out of the 4 pass rushers, Yaya Diaby, when I say the 4, like the front 4, when you're talking about a 4-man front on third down, Yaya Diaby's probably the least accomplished pass rusher in terms of sacks. Now, he's a very good pass rusher in terms of pressures. And I believe that some of those pressures are going to convert themselves into sacks this year, either by him maturing as a third-year player, by Larry Foote taking his game to the next level and really coaching the kid, playing opposite Hassan Reddick and next to Vita Vea and Kalijah Kancey is going to help as well. But I think that he's going to benefit much the same way Jalen McMillan benefited from playing opposite Chris Godwin and Mike Evans, at least for the first half of the season. And what I mean by that is Reddick is that guy. He's the dude that you have to really concern yourself with if you're an offensive coordinator. Like all hands on deck. We can't let Hassan Reddick get to the quarterback and wreck our game plan there.
Yeah.
And when Hassan Reddick is going to be rushing the passer, where's that pressure going to come from? Right in the quarterback's face. Most quarterbacks right-handed. So if Hassan Reddick's coming right at you, where are you going to run to? You're going to run to the other side. You're going to run to your left, right into Yaya Diaby. And I think Diaby is going to maybe clean up or cash in on some cleanup sacks, right? Then you've got 2 accomplished guys in the middle who can defeat a one-on-one no problem. So I think Diaby is in really good position here. Even if he's like the 4th best pass rusher, he can still put up a bunch of sacks just by playing with those other 3 players that we talked about and really kind of cleaning up on some of those guys. Not like he can't win one-on-one. I think he certainly can and will. And he made big strides last year. But those 2 outside linebackers, I think, are going to feed off each other. And then we love David Walker. We know Anthony Nelson. He is what he is. I think there's the potential, like you said, Matt, for this unit to really be strong, for them to have not just a great starting hockey shift, but also waves 2 and 3 come in.
Yeah.
And maybe you're not missing much.
I think the Bucs outside linebackers, if everything goes well, can duplicate essentially what the Eagles did in the Super Bowl of just, as you mentioned, hockey shift, just rotating guys in and out, keeping everybody fresh, and you're not getting a crazy drop-off. Certainly, Chris Braswell and Jose Ramirez and Marquise Watts probably won't bring the same thing to the table that Hassan Reddick and Yaya Diaby can. But nonetheless, for Yaya, it very much feels like a put up or shut up type of year. Because I do agree with you. Like, if things are coming Yaya's way, he'll get the job done. It's never been a matter of, like, not being able to wrap up or the quarterback shakes loose. And that's why Yaya's been so good in every other category. And
he's not JTS.
He's been great at tackles for loss and stopping the run as well. The biggest thing for Yaya is that he wouldn't get sacks because the ball is already out of the hands of the quarterback, not because the quarterback is evading and escaping Yaya Diaby. So I think that's really important to point out. And I know I said everything before about, well, what if Hassan Reddick isn't this type of guy? I'm fully prepared for Hassan Reddick to be the edge rusher that he was with the Eagles, helping the Eagles get to the Super Bowl a couple of years ago and getting double-digit sacks. I'm all for, 5 players having 9 sacks for the Bucs this year, because that will certainly be beneficial as well. But I'm going to chalk up Hassan Reddick last year to it was just bad from the start. He was in a bad funk. The situation he was in was terrible. I think wiping the slate clean and just getting back to what made him such a fantastic pass rusher in the first place is really going to do him a major solid. I think being here in Tampa Bay, I think reuniting with Larry Foote, I think will kind of reinvigorate him one more time. So if teams want to put all their focus on Hassan Reddick, well, that just opens the door for Yaya Diaby. I can see a similar kinship to Shaq and JPP in terms of production, in terms of friendly rivalry, trying to get to the quarterback first. That's what it was at times. And then, Chris Braswell, while it wasn't pretty last year, he's a guy at Alabama that had to wait his time over and over again and has worked with a lot of talent. So to give up on Chris Braswell would be silly. I mean, it was funny. Yesterday we were talking about Luke Gedeke, and we mentioned how Luke Gedeke had a rough start to his NFL career at guard, and it was terrible, and we were ready to run him out of town. And then he moved to tackle, and all of a sudden is playing at a Pro Bowl level. So there's no question that Chris Braswell can step it up this year. He's going to have to prove it, but I think it's way too early to give up on him. And if you get anything from Chris Braswell, again, that rounds out the room in such a better way than I think many would have imagined.
Yeah, I think you're spot on, Matt. And the thing too is a couple of things. Number one, if these tackles are getting beat up by the likes of Yaya Diaby and Hassan Reddick, when you have that second wave come in at Chris Braswell and David Walker, coming off the bench fresher, right? And these, they're going to play a lot together in the preseason, right? We're not going to see Yaya. We're not going to see Hassan play in the preseason outside of a series or two, or maybe a quarter in that final preseason game, or whenever they choose to put the starters in. That's going to be it. Chris Braswell and David Walker are going to play an awful lot in the preseason. Like we're going to see them get a ton of reps. Same with Marquise Watts, same with Jose Ramirez. Those four guys, and you're going to see Anthony Nelson sprinkled in too, but those four guys are going to really be fighting for playing time, and for some of those guys fighting for a roster spot, or maybe a practice squad spot. So it's going to be some really good competition, and I'm looking forward to Braswell getting a ton of reps in August to really brush up on his game. I think he got robbed and jobbed a little bit towards the end of the season. He should have got more playing time instead of Joe Tryon-Shoyinka. Didn't really happen. But I think that stunted his growth a little bit because, as Josh Capos pointed out, we did see the increased pressure rates down the stretch. We did see him get his first full-fledged sack of Bryce Young later in the season as well. So arrows pointing up for Chris Braswell. But you know what, Matt? If he's like the fourth best pass rusher, and I'm kind of putting David Walker based on the hype at number 3 behind Reddick and Diaby, this is still a really solid unit. It just doesn't have the proven production. It's got potential instead.
Yeah, for sure. And it's different. And I don't want to bash the guy. He's not here anymore. But it's different than like clinging on to Joe Tryon-Shoyinka to like finally turn the corner, because you have a proven commodity in Yaya Diaby. You have a proven commodity in Hassan Reddick, despite what happened last season. He still has way more on the resume that you can turn to and say, okay, he's gonna be something.
Right.
And now it's a wait and see approach for the other two young players that you just mentioned. But even in that case, you have Anthony Nelson as someone that you know what you're going to get out of him, where you feel good about at least 3 reliable guys, and then 2 more players that you at least have a notion of, okay, well, they could become something special, but at the same time, not having to rely on the production the way that the Bucs had to rely on Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, because they just didn't have, the top guys in the room to go out and do that. So a lot more was on the shoulders of JTS, and he wasn't really able to get it done. And Braswell too, he was a second-round pick for a reason. Like he's got the talent, it's just putting it together.
Yeah, and Anthony Nelson's a guy that Todd Bowles and Jason Light love. I mean, this is his 3rd multi-year contract with the Buccaneers, right? We've seen them re-sign Greg Gaines to a 1-year deal, right? We've seen them re-sign Levante David due to his age, right, to a 1-year deal. But Anthony Nelson's gotten now 2 back-to-back 2-year contracts with the team.
Yeah, there's only so many guys that are still from that Super Bowl winning team in 2020, and Anthony Nelson is one of them. I think people kind of forget that.
Yeah, and I mean, he's a player that they really like, and if he's outside linebacker 3, outside linebacker 4, outside linebacker 5, I mean, I don't fret when he's in the game. Even with fewer reps, he seems to make 2 or 3 plays a year that are just massive. You know. And so I'm all for keeping him around. He's a great locker room guy. He offers something different in terms of body composition. I mean, Hassan Reddick, when we saw him, he looks small. He looks like an inside linebacker playing edge rusher, right?
Yeah.
When you see him next to Yaya Diaby, it was a big difference in terms of size. Anthony Nelson, he's not like ripped like Yaya is. He doesn't look like an action figure, but he's every bit of 6'7". He's got long arms. He can set the edge really well, and he's a sneaky pass rusher. So yeah. I think having him and Reddick as the veterans in the room with a lot of potential around him, it's a pretty interesting group nonetheless. I'm going to certainly be keeping an eye on them during training camp in the preseason. I'm really excited to see how this outside pass rush from these edge rushers really comes into play. We were surprised when I asked Todd Bowles, what's the deepest position on defense in terms of depth? And he said, linebacker, inside linebacker. Now, of course, it starts with Levante David's return, but it's more than just Levante, Matt.
Yes, it is. I mean, this is a huge, huge year for Servassier Dennis as well, not just because he's going to be the full-time starting inside linebacker next to Levante David, but there's a lot hanging in the balance in terms of, can Servassier Dennis be the guy to take the mantle and become the next long-term starting inside linebacker for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? There is a fantastic lineage of Bucs inside linebackers, and Servassier Dennis has shown he's got great pass coverage ability, maybe the best on the team at inside linebacker at the moment. But the big thing for him is, can he also get through an entire 17-game season? Because Servassier Dennis just is not a guy that has been healthy over the first 2 years of his career. He's got great football IQ. He's got great athleticism and instinct for his position. He takes the ball away a ton in practice. He's even got a sack off of Jaden Daniels last year, the ever speedy guy. So him proving he can play a 17-game season will be super, super important. And we'll also see how this room rounds out in terms of, like, will Levante David continue to play all 3 downs, or will it be some type of rotation or substitution? Because, Anthony Walker Jr., I think, was one of the most impressive guys at OTAs and mandatory minicamp with the way that he just, he's verbal. He's best friends with Levante David. He was staying at Levante's place, during these practices. Another guy that can cover, and that's what this team needed, was guys in coverage. That's what Deion Jones brings as well. So it's a little bit of an older group, but guys that that they understand what their job is, what they have to do in this defense. And then you got, obviously, Levante, who's a legend, and Servassier, who could be the star of the show when it's all said and done, if he can be healthy and get his hands on the football just a little bit.
Yeah, and I think, unlike last year, when you kind of cringed when you saw guys like Vi Jones come off the practice squad, or J.J. Russell or K.J. Britt, who just showed early on he just did not have the athleticism to play. Right? He is a throwback 1990s, fill the A-gap, downhill type of linebacker, but not at all what you need in today's game of defense, which is really relies on coverage. You got to be able to drop in coverage. Levante's been one of the best to do that. At the same time, he's 35. He's not getting any better in coverage, right? That just comes with time. But I don't feel bad if I were to see Anthony Walker or Deion Jones. Deion Jones, I thought, had a really good game against the Commanders in the playoff game. That was a bit of a surprise how much playing time he got. I think it was warranted. And we saw him make kind of a dramatic interception in the OTAs. He's still got the speed, but he's got plenty of playing time and experience in his career at age 30. So you're going to have Anthony Walker turn 30 this year. Deion Jones is already 30. You've got old man Levante at 35. Servassier Dennis, who is entering his 3rd season in Todd Bowles' system. He knows it. He just has to be able to stay healthy and play it. But this is a really experienced group. And I think that Servassier Dennis is going to just absorb a ton of knowledge from these players in the meeting rooms like a sponge. And we know that he's got the ability and he has the knowledge of this defense if he puts it together. But, I'm kind of like you, Matt. I wouldn't be surprised or disappointed to see Deion Jones get a series or two, to see Anthony Walker get a series or two, whether it's for Servassier Dennis, whether it's for Levante David, to keep these guys fresh and healthy for 17 weeks. I couldn't say that last year. I didn't want to see J.J. Russell or K.J. Britt necessarily, but we had to.
Yeah, you feel better about like the top four guys at the position where if any of them have to start for a couple of games, it shouldn't be that big of a deal. And it's so interesting because we just mentioned about how much age there is with these inside linebackers, but it's also kind of a new group at the same time. Besides Levante, I know Savase Dennis is going into his third year, but
Yeah,
he's a guy that really hasn't started many games.
right.
Understandably, he was lower on the depth chart. Deion Jones got here in December of last year. All right. He
Yeah,
was only there for 2 months. He's relatively new to the team. Now, obviously, going through all these practices in the spring and the summer will certainly expedite that process. And of course, Anthony Walker Jr. was not here last season. So it's veteran guys. Some people have been here for a while, but then also kind of a new group
yeah.
at the same time. And then there's a couple of undrafted free agents with John Bullock out of Nebraska and Nick Jackson out of Iowa. We'll see if they can bring anything to the table, maybe
Yeah.
make the practice squad, maybe make the team based on special teams or something like that. But a couple of undrafted free agents to keep an eye on going into the season, because as we know, the Bucs seem to always find an undrafted free agent to have an impact on their team.
Yeah, they sure do. And we love the impact that Josh Capo makes on the Pewter Report podcast. And Josh is going to be on the show tomorrow to talk about contract extensions coming soon. Well, hey, Josh Capo is our resident Pewter Report contract and cap analyst, and he'll be joining the show tomorrow to talk about contract extensions, possibly for the likes of Cade Otton, Luke Gedeke, Zion McCollum, maybe some other players. We'll have Josh on tomorrow at 4 o'clock to talk about it. So make sure you check out the Pewter Report podcast, 4 o'clock on Wednesday here on Pewter Report TV. And if you see that BG up in the upper right-hand corner, that is your signal to get to Briar Greaves, insurance.com. Check out the website. It is officially hurricane season. No, it's not my fault or Briar Greaves' fault. That's what the weatherman says. That's what NOAA says. It is officially hurricane season here in Florida. Make sure you have flood insurance if you are in a flood zone. And that doesn't necessarily mean by the beach either. You could be in a coastal flooding zone, but you can also be in a flood zone if you live near a creek or river. If there's a massive amounts of rainfall that sometimes comes with hurricanes and tropical storms, any flooding inside the house, your homeowner's insurance is not going to help. But if you have homeowners and flood insurance, you can be protected. Make sure that you have the right coverage. Give Briar Greaves Insurance a call. Visit them on the web at Briar Greaves Insurance. That's BRIER Greaves, GRIEVES, insurance.com, or give them a call at 813-876-4166. Have them save you some money. Give them a call and say, I'd like to check on my homeowner's policy. Am I paying too much with my current carrier? Am I paying too much for auto insurance? One phone call could save you money. Work with an independent agency that you can trust. Briar Greaves Insurance is my own personal insurance agency. We had Jason Light, friend of the program, on the show saying he too uses Briar Greaves Insurance. So give them a call, 813-876-4166.
So when it comes to the conversation of, where the Bucs have the best depth or the deepest depth, it's so funny at the cornerback position. They might be the deepest group. I know we talked about some groups being top heavy, whether it's outside linebacker or, defensive tackle. But you look at the list at cornerback for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers: Zion McCollum, Jamel Dean, Benjamin Morrison, Jacob Parrish, Kindle Vildor, and Bryce Hall coming back. I mean, that is a deep, deep group. We can argue about the production that Jamel Dean has brought to this team, the production that Zion McCollum has had, the fact that the secondary hasn't taken the ball away a ton. But, for a guy like Jamel Dean who gets injured a pretty good amount, the Bucs did a great job of addressing the backup situation with their second and third round picks. So I feel pretty good about the cornerback room, where somebody has to step up this year. There's just too many bodies in the room and too much opportunity, especially for these rookies, to go and be an impact player for the Bucs this year if Dean or Zion McCollum doesn't get it done.
I agree. And I think Benjamin Morrison's that player, right? He's the second round pick. The Bucs feel like they got a steal. He was a first round graded player on their board. And I think Tampa Bay, Matt, when you look back at the last couple of drafts, and this is, you have to take them for their word, but I kind of believe it, right? They feel like they got a steal with Jalen McMillan. They felt like that he was going to be a second-round player that they got in the third. There was some injuries during his final year at Washington. They felt like a steal there. Bucky Irving turned out to be a steal in the fourth round, right? 1,000-yard rusher in the fourth round. Jason Light has gone on record saying, "Hey, that's where we had him pegged, right?" So
Right.
it wasn't like we had him as a second-round player, because if we did, we would have drafted him in the second round. But he was a steal just based on the value that they've got there. And I think Morrison now is kind of like that Jalen McMillan steal. I think that he has first round ability, and health will be the biggest thing, right? We saw him kind of miss a couple days with probably a hamstring injury during the mandatory minicamp. Not uncommon. We saw David Walker have the same thing. Not uncommon to see rookies that aren't used to playing in Florida in the hot and the humid climate suffer some hamstring injuries, which is typically a dehydration issue. You play at Notre Dame, when you play it at Central Arkansas, different kind of climates than down here in Florida. But I don't know, man. I just think Morrison's going to be a really good player. We'll see how much playing time he gets. We'll see if Dean gets either pushed towards greatness or pushed towards the bench by Morrison. But one of those two players, Dean or Morrison, I think is going to have a pretty good season opposite Zion McCollum. And I like Jacob Parrish in the slot. I think he's going to end up locking down the nickel job. I think it's kind of his to lose. And then Bryce Hall and Kendall Vildor, as you mentioned, I mean, that seems like the cornerback room, right? And we'll see if Roman Parody or some of these other younger corners can step up and maybe be a surprise player. But it's certainly better than it was last year.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Like Bryce Hall, again, it was a freaky situation with him getting a season-ending injury in the first game of the season. But if he's going to be your fourth, fifth-string corner, I still feel really good about Bryce Hall starting, 2 games in a row if it comes to that this season. And I don't know how much worse the Bucs could get injured in the secondary at cornerback specifically with what went on last year. So they are way more equipped for it this upcoming season. Morrison, in my opinion, he is a first-round talent that only dropped to the second round because of the hip injury. Jamel Dean is getting pushed one way or another, and I think that just elevates the entire room when you have everybody fighting for playing time and fighting for opportunity. And Jacob Parrish, we at least saw already at minicamp and rookie minicamp. He had a good day, he had a bad day, but no matter what, he was around the football. Yeah. He just finds the football the way that Savasi Dennis, a linebacker, was able to find the football. Yeah. So if he's going to have that trade, sometimes it's luck, but sometimes that's just kind of what happens when you're a football player in the secondary. If he's going to be that guy that's around the football, well, you want him on the field more often than not. Now, we'll see how the Bucs decide to implement the nickel position, because Todd Bowles gave a couple of different answers on this podcast and during press conferences and things of that nature. It may be a week-to-week type of process, but there's a lot more weapons at the disposal of Todd Bowles, particularly at corner, which can allow him to do a lot of different things. And I'm intrigued to see what the TODD comes up with.
Yeah, I am too. It seems to me that there are more guys that can legitimately play, right? I think Josh Hayes probably makes the team as the final guy just because he's a fantastic gunner, one of the best gunners in the league. But that's kind of where you want Josh. I think you want him in that role, kind of like what they had with Ryan Smith years ago, special teams demon guy as a backup cornerback there. And Tyreek Funderburk, undrafted free agent out of Appalachian State, he needs a Herculean training camp in preseason. I mean, he's got to be a ball hawk. He's got to just play night and day different and better than he did a year ago to really have a chance. So we shall see. Kind of like the cornerback position and the outside linebacker position. A lot of potential there.
Yeah.
You feel pretty good about it right now on paper and with pencil, but let's see when push comes to shove. Can these guys finally pick off some passes? I mean, 6 interceptions from the secondary and 7 as a team. You're not going to go to the playoffs and win and have a Super Bowl type season with that many, or I should say that few amount of interceptions. So they're going to have some guys really, get their hands on the pigskin here and and not just knock it down, but create some takeaways.
Yeah, it was way too scarce last year, and you saw that rear its ugly head in the postseason as well. I mean, they didn't force a punt and they didn't take the ball away, so it was the worst type of double whammy that you could get in a football game if you are a defense or you're a defensive play caller. So, we saw how crucial turnovers were when the Bucs made that run and won the Super Bowl in 2020. They're going to need to get back to it, and that's why Todd Bowles all off season was like, I want ball hawks. I don't care what position you play. You could be an edge rusher knocking the ball out. It could be a corner intercepting the ball. And hopefully the Bucs can find the right answers to that this season.
I'll tell you what, we have found some answers for our Pewter Platinum people. We're up to 20 Pewter Platinum members. We're well over 100 in terms of our membership total. We want to thank everybody who is a Pewter Report TV channel member, but as we always do, we give our Pewter Platinum members a shout out on the show. Scott Federico, Rachel Gordon, Noah Parr, Scotty J, Dave Anderson, Hezo813, Ash Fishpool, Joel Elrican, Sam, John Dale Morris, Zach Brannigan, RP89, Eric McMillan, Connor for Reals, Kevin Thomas, Mario Thomas. Met a lot of y'all at the walk-ons get together just a couple weeks ago, including Zach Jarvis and Leighton Carter. Great seeing you guys there. The Guys Gifted and Brandon Riley, thank you all so much for becoming Pewter Report's TV channel members, especially the Platinum membership level. Greatly appreciate that. As you all probably know by now, if you don't, I'll tell you, becoming a Pewter Report TV channel member is a great way to show your support for our channel here. We use this money for our travel budget. We're going to be going to a couple of away games this year, and we've certainly already been to Mobile, Alabama for the Senior Bowl, Indianapolis Scouting Combine back in March. We were at the NFL annual meeting in West Palm, and this is where we get that travel budget from you guys. We go to these places, get all the Bucs news and scoop, and then give it right back to you in the form of information when it comes to our Pewter Report podcast and our content over on pewterreport.com, our website. Pewter People membership start at $3.99. Then we have the $6.99 Pewter Pro membership. Pewter Premier members, $9.99, and Pewter Platinum members at $24.99. Those two last groups get access to our Pewter Insider videos, our podcasts that are exclusive. We do those Fridays at 1:30, and it's just a great way for you guys to get some more content on a Friday. That bonus podcast really comes in handy during the season, too, because it's the most current, up-to-date information with Matt out there at practices on Friday. But you can see all of the different membership levels here. We have Mike Greenberg, Assistant General Manager, and Zion McCollum, the cornerback, at our Pewter Platinum member meetup in June. So make sure you become a member this year to take advantage of that next offseason. And you can also get some free Pewter Report merch after a couple months as well. So all you have to do is hit the join button on the front page of Pewter Report TV, our YouTube channel. Also, when you're there, hit the subscribe button. We're on the way to 20,000 subscribers. I think we're at 19,420. So we're marching towards 20,000. We'll hopefully get there sometime during training camp. Thanks to you guys, but greatly appreciate your support.
Yeah, thank you so much, everybody. We couldn't do this without you, and it was awesome meeting some of you at our Pewter Platinum member event. So, yeah, thank you all so much. We have one more position to talk about, and that is the safety position. And this is an intriguing group because you got a star in Antoine Winfield Jr. There's no doubt about it. You have a pretty good, presumably, another starting safety in Tyke Smith that'll be lining up next to Antoine Winfield Jr. Christian Izien is a solid backup, in my opinion. But outside of Antoine Winfield Jr. and Tyke Smith, everybody else at the safety position, including Christian Izien, are undrafted free agents.
Yeah.
Kayvon Merriweather's been around for a little bit, undrafted free agent. J.J. Roberts this year out of Marshall, and, of course, Shiloh Sanders that makes headlines with everything that he does. So it's an interesting group because it's certainly, again, I know I've mentioned some positions being top-heavy. You have the star power. I think Tyke Smith eventually could be a Pro Bowl player as well. So you have two top guys. Izien has proven he's a solid backup, probably better as a backup than necessarily a starter. Right. But a lot of question marks after that. I know Kayvon Merriweather has played safety, hasn't always been the most ideal type of player. Yep. J.J. Roberts, a lot of potential. Jason Light has been pretty high on him. Mike Beal as well. And Shiloh, we'll see what happens with him if he can compete to to make the practice
Yeah.
squad. But, if something happens to the top two guys, I don't know how I feel about the depth at this position specifically. I understand you can't address every single position in free agency and the draft, but you have a lot of undrafted free agents at this position after the top two. And that's a little dicey if something happens this year.
Last year, if you remember, guys, they had to get Mike Edwards back off waivers, right?
Yeah.
And then they even re-signed Ryan Neal. That's how desperate they were at the safety position. And that was with Jordan Whitehead on the team too. They cut him because he got injured and just wasn't very good last year. So they're hopeful that Tyke Smith can be an improvement over Jordan Whitehead. But man, he and Anton Winfield Jr. have got to stay healthy. Both of those guys missed some time due to injury last year. And then, like you said, then it's the backups that are coming in. And it's not like they don't have talent. It's just they're undrafted free agents. And sometimes you're an undrafted free agent for a reason. And we'll see. It's going to be really interesting to see if J.J. Roberts ends up making the team. He was the super sleeper I talked about in one of my last Pewter Pulse videos. The Bucs really like him. They gave him a ton of guaranteed money. They did not give any guaranteed money to Shiloh Sanders, but he has been getting some thumbs up from the coaching staff, the personnel staff. He's doing all the right things, but this is going to come down to training camp when the pads come on and in the preseason games under the lights. Can you show up? Can you make plays? Can you wrap up and make tackles? Can you take the ball away, force fumbles? There have been times where both of these players have done that in college, but can they do it at the pro level? That's going to be the big question.
Yeah, it's a good storyline for training camp. There's only so many starting positions up for grabs, so then you got to go to the backups and who's going to be one of these backup players. So it's an open field right now. Like Christian Izien, I think probably has the best chance and odds to already kind of be on this team if not for the thought process of Todd Bowles, what he has on his mind. But I think it's a given Izien's going to be on this team, but there's still going to be a lot of competition for those last couple of spots at safety. And it's all about what you do in those practices and in those preseason games. So one guy may have the opportunity to steal the show, and we'll see who it is.
Yes, exactly. And I'm looking forward to this training camp. It's going to be pretty highly contested for a lot of these positions. This is a very talented Buccaneer team. This is not going to be one of those teams where, 4 and 5 and 6 undrafted free agents are going to make the team. This is going to be a tight team to have to crack if you're an undrafted free agent. And there might be some veterans that they'll let go too if some of these younger players come out of the woodworks. Speaking of young players, Abraham says, Scott Reynolds, keep an eye on Kansas State running back Joe Jackson. He was a student of mine when he was in high school. Yes, I know Joe Jackson. He's a damn good player. They got Dylan Edwards as the starting running back now, replacing DJ Giddens, who went on to where did he go? The Colts. He was drafted by the Colts. And Joe Jackson will be that 1-2 punch at Kansas State. So that's cool. It's a cool story. Appreciate that very much. Just like we appreciate everybody joining us here. If you're so inclined, we're going to invite you to come back tomorrow. We got a great show tomorrow with Josh Capo joining us, talking Bucs contract extensions coming soon. Josh Capo, our cap analyst and contract guy, will be here to break down some possible extensions and when we can expect them later this summer.
Yeah, looking forward to having Josh back on the show. So in the meantime, if you're not already doing so, please follow us on all of our social media on X, Facebook, and Instagram. We are at Pewter Report, and our YouTube channel is Pewter Report TV. Please like and subscribe. Leave a comment on this video as well. Tell us who you think on the Bucs has the deepest room on the defensive side of the football. So that's going to do it for us on today's show. For Scott Reynolds, I'm Matt Matera saying thanks everybody for watching, and we will see you tomorrow at 4 p.m. for another edition of the Pewter Report podcast. Out.